Welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast, where we talk about struggles and celebrations that leaders and entrepreneurs experience on their journey to success. I'm your host, Kristina, and I'm passionate about helping you achieve massive amounts of success at work and at home. We'll talk about all things people and organizational wellness, share relatable stories, and feature insightful guests because quality people and processes are at the heart of every success story. Ready to learn, grow, and have fun? Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast. I'm your host, Kristina Schmitt. So today I'm going to take a little pause or maybe intermezzo from the Healthy Leaders series because this is important for really continuing to develop the healthy leaders, but it's also a wonderful standalone episode as well because it's such a key thing to changing everything, changing your life, making your life the way you want it to be. So I'm going to talk about habits. I know there's been so many books and talks and a lot of information around habits. And they all have some great things in them. So I just kind of want to bring it all together, give you some reasons why habits are so important, but then also give you some 3 basic rules or things to remember about setting new habits so that you can be more successful. So to kick us off, let's just talk about, why are habits important? So I used to do a sales training that was written by Wayne Van Wyck, and he had a wonderful line in there that I loved it. And it was, first we form our habits, then our habits form us. Let that sink in for a minute. It is so powerful to think about because when you think about everything we do day to day is really a habit. It's, that what you do when you walk in from being out from work or being, out at the store or whatever, and where you put your things, that's a habit. Whether you go right and make dinner or do something, or you sit on the couch for 20 minutes or whatever it is. But all of those things are habits. What do you do before bed? Those are habits. What do you do when you get up? Those are habits. So if we want different results, then we need to look at our habits differently. So we can form our own habits. And this very much relates to the thoughts, feelings, behaviors, results wheel that I've talked about many, many times before. Because these habits are really another rendition of our automatic thoughts. So these beliefs or these things that we just do on autopilot. So the thing that's cool is that, there are things that our body is going to do on autopilot, like our heart's going to beat on autopilot. We're going to breathe on autopilot, and we can control our breathing, but we can't really control our heartbeat. So even blinking, that kind of thing. So those things are auto, and we really do want them to be on auto, but there are so many things that we need to put on auto, otherwise our brain would be in complete overload, but we can change them because we do have power over our thoughts. So very much in the same way that we have power over our thoughts, we have power over our habits because again, they're just the autopilot thing. So just to kind of give you an example, back when I was in manufacturing and before I became a leader and I was implementing a lot of our lean things, I was taught about this thing called leadership standard work. Looking at it now, I'm like, oh my gosh, I get what we were trying to do. But looking at it back then, it was rolled out maybe not right. It was rolled out in a way that, these are the things you need to make sure you're doing every day, which having the information that I have today about habits and about our behaviors and how everything is so controlled by that, it all makes perfect sense. But we missed a link. So this is a big reason why I want companies, especially if lean manufacturing is new, I want companies to very much separate, at least at first. So definitely at first. Separate out and learn leadership first, then start to learn lean. And it actually is very much related to how and why we form habits. Because when we're rolling lean out, there are a lot of leadership background habits that need to be put in place. So if we're trying to learn a tool and kind of learn all this other stuff, we actually can't learn the leadership habits too. So if we separate it, we can be more successful. And this is very much like habit forming and is one of my rules. So with this leadership standard work, it was meant to be this daily thing that we were supposed to post on our doors as leaders and say, oh, look, we did that habit. And it was almost like that peer pressure thing that, oh, people are going to walk by and see that I did it or that I didn't do it. So you get a lot of people that would put like, okay, my daily stand-up meeting, that's a key thing that I have to do every single day. So I'm going to make that a habit. And it's like, well, if it's a meeting and you already go every single day, it's already a habit, isn't it? So do we really need to track it? No, we don't. So this is where I think we miss the gap. When we're learning something new, we do have to put a big focus on it and we do need to track it, which, spoiler alert, another rule. But we do need to be cognizant and maybe use that peer pressure for extra accountability to make sure we're doing something new. So these habits, looking back, should have been things like, I'm going to hold a coaching session with one person. I'm going to do that this week. That's going to be one of my habits. Or I'm going to reach out and have contact with these 5 people or with 5 people in the day. And so some of those were on those trackers, but we would put all these wonderful, lofty things that we weren't doing or really easy things that we already were doing. And it would just become a jumbled up mess. And then we didn't have the practice or those leadership skills to really like kind of bring them in and use them for what they were. Because what they were is they were a way for us to practice changing our behaviors. And this is where we really get into a culture shift, right? When we can all, as a leadership team or as a company, when we can work on changing our behaviors to an aligned set of behaviors or values, then we can really change the culture. So these leadership standard work things that we were doing, they had so much power, but because we were trying to do so many of them and we maybe didn't have a focus, we didn't understand our value system, we didn't really have a cohesive view of what they were supposed to be as a team, they didn't work. And we didn't understand the power of these habits and what we were trying to do, and that we were actually even just trying to make them habits. We just thought they were like, oh my gosh, it's one more thing I have to do. So if we want our habits to work, I'm going to give you 3 things because I like things in 3s. They're easy to remember that way. I'm going to give you 3 things, 3 rules you can say, or tips to make your habits more successful. So rule number 1, track it. So we did this with the leadership standard work. We put them on the door and it was supposed to be an easy, like something you would see all the time. So it would trigger you like, oh, I got to remember to do that thing. But again, what we were missing there is we were missing like the meat behind it, maybe the reason why behind it, because understanding why we're doing something is usually very motivating. This is why when we set goals, we understand the why and we understand the benefit or the what's in it for me is very important. So with these new habits, it's good. So sub rule 1, maybe 1A is make sure you know why. But okay, so the rule number 1, track it. So I'm going to give you some tips around tracking it. So it should be something very visible. So something you're going to see a lot and something that's easy to do. So if you're tracking your habits like in a spreadsheet and it's like you have to like click, through all these folders to find it, to pull it up and kind of mark it off, that's not going to be as effective as if you have it posted somewhere. Okay. So actually this little piece of paper here that I hate it being my background, but look, it's a talking point for today, but that is my new habit that I'm tracking this year. So it is very visible when I turn around, I see it whenever I'm on a video call. So it keeps it very top of mind for me. And what that does for me is it allows me to see how I'm doing. And that can be sometimes motivating and sometimes it can be daunting, right? Like if you have all these things on it and you haven't done any of it, then it can be like, oh, I didn't do it. And again, this is a thought, right? So we can either say, I didn't do well, I'm a failure, or I didn't do well. What can I do differently next time? What got in the way? How can I overcome that thing that got in the way? So that's the kind of attitude we need to be having around our habits. So tracking it is so key because it allows us to see how we did, use that as a motivational platform to, jumping platform to either to make an improvement from how we did. And it allows us to say, hey, I did a good job. Hi, look at what I've done. So mine's pretty successful. It's only been a week or so, but it looks pretty good. So I'm pretty excited about it. So it's good, right? But the other thing around it is that, so mine is a LinkedIn rule of like 5 comments, 5 DMs, 5 connection outreaches. What I've actually put into my own like success levels is the fact that getting to 5 of those every single day from day 1 is going to be tough. So I'm okay. And I feel successful that I have something in every single section and that I've done something in every single section so that I'm making progress, right? I'm not going to go from 0 to 15 things in a day, but I can start out with, okay, I'm getting 5 total things. And then the next day I can do 6, and then once I get into that habit, it becomes simpler. It becomes, less, oh my gosh, this person doesn't want to talk to me, mental gymnastics going on in my brain. Then I can be more successful with that. And it'll just be easier, right? So, because we've gotten over some of it because we've stretched ourselves a bit. Because habits are very much like muscle exercises because they're brain muscle exercises that we can stretch ourselves only so far, right? If you've ever tried to increase your flexibility, let's say you're trying to learn how to do the splits and you're, this far off the ground. So like 2 feet off the ground from day 1. If you tried to push yourself all the way down, you would rip something. Right? So you can only stretch yourself so far. So when you're learning habits, sub rule 1B, it can only stretch so far, right? So just be mindful of that. So that's rule number 1, track it. Rule number 2, start one at a time. So this is another failure that I see, that I saw in the leadership standard work, but I see it all the time. And I especially see it around New Year's, is everybody wants to change everything all at the same time. So they come up with, 5 or 8 different things that they're going to start doing. And that is so overwhelming for our brains. And it's pretty much impossible to change that many things at a time because it takes so much focus. Remember, we're taking this thing that we do that is on autopilot and we're bringing it back to the front of our minds. And we're being very conscious of what we're doing and how we're doing it. So it takes more focus. So to do that with multiple things at a time, it becomes overwhelming. And now like implementing these new habits is more of a full-time job than it is, part of improving ourselves. So we can't make changing our habits a full-time job, right? We're not going to change who we are in a single day, single month, a single year. We're going to change some things that are key. So you can choose the one thing that you think is going to have the biggest impact. You can choose a thing that's going to be easy because it's, I always talk about momentum and building momentum. When we do something that's easy and we have success, then we've got some momentum and we start to build that up. So pick something that's easy, pick something that is maybe not guaranteed success, but that's not too far outside. And then you kind of stretch those muscles, you get used to that change. And then once you're used to that, now you can do something else and you can add another habit to it. So rule number 2 is starting that one at a time and keeping mindful of, either the thing that's going to make the biggest impact or the thing that is going to be successful or more successful, because again, building that momentum. And rule number 3, this one is sometimes hard to learn, but failure of the day or failure for today does not mean failure for the habit or failure for you, right? If you don't succeed at your goal every single day, you are not a failure. You are still successful. you still like, I always tell people when they're like, oh man, I was going to try to work out every single day and I missed Tuesday. And it's like, but you got Monday and Wednesday, right? Like, so you can say you did it 2 more times than you did last week or 2 more times than you did last month. So there's always success to it. And there's always that success. Remember that jumping platform for success or for change. When we don't do something and we fail and we say, what got in my way? How can I overcome that tomorrow? So when we can problem solve our failures, it's helpful. So tell you a story that might help motivate you. When I started doing a training program many, many years ago, when we started this habit tracking. And so the sheet had about 15 lines. So again, one at a time, right? So I had about 5 or 6 different things, but ultimately I was really motivated by one. So I started to just stick to the one. And it was doing my dishes every night. It was actually running my dishwasher every night. So there was a lot of times prior to this that I would tell myself, oh, it's not full, so I'll run it tomorrow. But then inevitably the next day I would, put breakfast dishes in there and it'd be so full. And I was like, well, I can't run it now. I have to run it now, but I still have all these other things that I need to put in it. So I made a rule. I said, you know what? I'm going to run it regardless. Because whenever I said I was going to run it, I could find enough things to wash that it would be full, even if I didn't think there was any way possible that it would be full. And even if it wasn't totally full, the dishes probably got cleaner than if I had it jammed so full that they couldn't even get washed. So that became a habit. So I started it in the first month and, it was, out of the 30-day month, I think I did it 5 times. And I had this thing posted on my fridge. So every time I opened the fridge, I was like, oh. But that was month 1 when I was trying to do 5 or 6 different things, right? And there was too many things. So the next month I said, I'm just going to really focus on this one. I'm kind of like not going to care about these other things. I'm going to focus on this one. So month 2 out of the 30 days, I got probably 15, maybe 20. So it was like, ooh, hey, I'm doing better. Then month 3, I got it almost every single day, right? It started to become ingrained in my behaviors that before I would go up, I'd say, oh, I got to do this. And it actually, the days that I didn't do it, and this kind of stuck a bit later, maybe after those first 90 days, but the days that I didn't do it, that I either forgot or I said, oh, I just can't be asked to do it today. One day is not going to kill me. It killed me. The negative impact of not having my clean dishes first thing in the morning that I could just put away and, have an empty dishwasher for the day. That was so negative and it threw my whole morning off that it became such another motivator for me to do it at night. So what I'm trying to get at here is actually something that gets called out in the 5 a.m. club is that, we hear this, it takes 22 days to make a habit. It actually takes 90 days to get a habit in there. And sometimes it could be more. Like if you're not doing it every single day, it's probably going to be longer. But these habit forming skills that we have, they take time. So setting 18 habits to do in a single year is probably not going to be successful. So that rule number 3 is, though, keeping in mind that when we make mistakes, when we have a failure, it doesn't mean we failed on the habit. It's part of that learning process. It's part of that 90-day kind of solidification. So keep that in mind. So the 3 rules, track it, start with just one, and failure of the day does not mean failure of the habit. So keep those in mind as you're setting your habits this year. As we continue through the Healthy Leader series, we're going to be given some habits we maybe could start, or we'll start sparking habits in your brain that you may want to start. And keep these 3 things in mind because they're going to make you more successful. All right. If you enjoyed today, please like the episode, like the video, share it with a friend, subscribe, and leave a review and a comment if you're watching YouTube. Thank you for listening. I always appreciate all of my listeners. So thank you so much. And I will see you on the next episode of the Business Building Blocks podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Business Building Blocks podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. If you found value in our conversation, please leave a quick review, like, or share. It helps us reach more amazing listeners like you. For more resources and insights, visit KristinaSchmitt.ca, where you can find tools and support to empower your leadership journey. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.